Good morning. I wanted to show how I do the wiring on my mowers. This isn't what you should do for a regular basis, but if you're looking at a mower and just wanted to test it out and the wiring circuits were bad, you could bypass everything with the simple, I think it's 6 wires. So I'll go through it here and show you what you need. What I do, starting off, I'm going to tell you about the ground circuit, and then I'm going to go into the hot. I call the ground circuits my knots, and the other one's the hot. It's 12 volt. Okay, so what I do is, from the battery, you'll have a chassis ground right here. You want to make sure that connection is connected. Mine in this case is right here to the frame. But then I run another full battery gauge wire all the way up to this panel that goes here. And that's where all my other grounds connect to, because I don't have a area in here to connect all the grounds. And then from there, they go and they splice out to each device that would need a ground. So I'll be using a ground going up to the fan, and a ground to the PTO, and let's see what else. I think that might be it. No, ground. No, the starter is grounded through the motor block and the chassis. I think that's all on the grounds. Now on the positive side, first of all, my charge wire comes from the voltage regulator right here, and I pull that center lead off and run it directly to the battery, and that gives me my charging. Then from the battery, I have a battery gauge wire that goes up to my control panel again, and on the back side of and then I have it going straight to a battery isolator switch. The battery isolator switch uses a special key. I get these at O'Reilly Auto Parts, and this special key energizes the fan and everything when I turn it on. It also sends 12 volts to the anti-backfire pin on the carburetor to open the backfire pin on the carb, and it energizes the circuit for the PTO and for the fan, obviously. And that's about it. So then off the back of the battery isolator terminal, here's the main lead coming in from the battery. Here's the other circuits. So let's see, let's trace them. Well, I can't trace them out. Well, this one obviously would be PTO. No, that's the starter switch. That's the starter switch. Goes out to the starter. Then here's to be the PTO. And you notice how I get rid of the normal harness and I just use 2 legs. There's several paired legs here that you can use on a regular switch. So if these ones burn out, you can switch to, I think it's these back 2 and then these back 2. So basically, you just have, you're taking all your battery power, ground and positive, up to this panel. Then from here, you're doing your branch circuits. You're doing a hot and a not out to the fan, and a hot and a not down to the PTO, and a hot to the backfire pin, because you don't need a ground there. It's grounded through the motor block. And then the other wire would be this charge wire. But the thing is that you don't have any safety switches, so this is not something you should probably do on a regular mower, maybe just to test a mower or something. But you don't have any fuses, you don't have any relays. And what I find is then you have a little bit of theft prevention too, because not everybody's toting around a key like this. And on theft prevention also, I don't run a chuck cable up here, because too many times I find they get out of adjustment or they seize a little bit and you're not completely unchoking it. The way I have mine set up is I turn this to power up, and then there's my start. But you see, it won't start unless I reach back with my left hand and feather the choke over there. And you see, as far as wiring, another simplification is all I'm doing to kill the motor is I take away that 12 volts to the backfire pin. So I don't have that ground wire to go kill the coils. I'm not grounding the coils to kill the motor. So that's why you might have heard a little delay between me taking the key out and it stopping. So if the thief did not know that you have to reach back there and feather that choke manually, then he'd be sitting here cranking it, and that would help too. So you only have really one wire to the motor that's connected, other than your starter wire, which is from your solenoid, the other side of it, to the starter. And so that, you know, but the one wire that you have from these motors, I get them from Amazon. They're only $900 to your door, and it runs as 72, no problem. The only wire you have is the center lead on your voltage regulator. That's your charge wire that charges the battery. That's pretty much the only wire to the motor itself, because the ground is through the chassis. You might consider the PTO to be another one, but that's not really the motor. So it's basically as simple as it gets. In fact, if you have a mower that doesn't use a hydraulic fan, that's one more circuit. A hydro cooler fan, that's one more circuit you wouldn't have. The benefits to it are, as you hear that fan spin up, I get a lot more amperage to that fan because I'm not going through a bunch of relays and fuses. Another benefit is when you turn the isolator switch off, you're isolating your battery. So that now you're not going to get any, if you had any machines that the battery, it leaks down, or I mean you got a short or something somewhere, and the next day the battery's always dead, you won't have that problem, because once you turn off the isolator switch, the battery's like it's sitting on a shelf. There's no draw on the battery overnight or during storage. Now, as far as not having fuses, I've never had a problem with that. Some might think that you need a 20 amp in line on your PTO line, your PTO switch, so you don't burn out a clutch if you hit something. But my experience tells me that that's not the case. I've hit a lot of stuff, stopped the motor dead, never had that happen. The only time I ever lost a PTO was when I had 2 brand new ones I ordered from Amazon. I don't remember the brand, but they were a Warner style clutch. And I put one on. I went to the first yard I went to, and in this case I had a fuse on that machine. I had a 20 amp fuse on that machine. I hadn't deharnessed that machine yet. And on the very first pass, they thought they marked a large pipe that was under the leaf pile that was sticking out horizontally by putting a tire at the center of the pipe, and the pipe was 20 feet long. Now you could see the tire, but you couldn't see the pipe sticking out. So I hit that pipe, and that PTO never worked again. I have not yet taken it apart to see what happened, but in that case, obviously the fuse did not help. So I'm not a big fan of the fuses. I think it's another connection point that leads to failure. I've been running these kind of harnesses for years, and I've never had a problem with fuses. Now, if you smell wires smoking, you know the smell of burning insulation, then you obviously use your judgment and undo your battery isolator switch, and that disconnects all circuits, so you don't have to worry about burning it down because of electrical fire. If you're intuitive and you just disconnect your battery isolator switch, which is something you do all the time. So those benefits, in my opinion, far outweigh. But you shouldn't do this on a regular mower that you use every day. Don't try this at home. This would be like just to test the mower out. So when I say I've been doing it for years, well, that's a, you know, the 5-year test, I guess. So, but I can't advocate, you know, disconnecting any safety interlocks or anything like that. All right, I want to see if I can say this more simply. It's so simple in my mind, and it's hard to explain. So when I get these motors in, they got a big connector. You can see it down there hanging by the starter. I don't use that connector at all. What I do is I unplug this red from this side of the red that goes to the center of the voltage regulator. And then instead I make my own wire to go from that center of the voltage regulator to the battery to charge. From the battery, I run a hot wire through a battery cable up to my panel to this battery isolator switch. When that switch is energized, it sends power to this switch for the PTO. It sends power to this switch for the starter. Then it sends power to the fan, the hydraulic cooler fan, and you'll hear it turn on right away. And it sends power to the fuel point on the carb, so that fuel can get into the carburetor, the backfire pin. So you'll notice too, that correlates to, there's 4 circuits here. That's the 4 circuits I just described. Then on the other side, for grounds, really you don't even need the big battery sized cable coming up here from the battery. Because you only have 2 circuits for ground. One is going to the fan to complete that circuit, and one is going to the PTO switch, and everything else is grounded through, oh no, not to the PTO switch, the PTO itself. The PTO switch is the hot side. Okay, so everything else is grounded through the chassis. So I don't know if that makes it, that might be a little simpler way to explain it. Then the only other, obviously, circuits is you got to, you know, your positive lead goes over to your starter solenoid. From the starter solenoid, you got the big cable going to your starter. To pull that solenoid in is I think it's a 12 gauge wire up here to the start switch. This momentary start switch. And see, that's one of the 4 hots that came off of that circuit, right over here to the back side of that start switch. Okay, maybe that's a little simpler way to put it. All right, have a good day.